Alright, welcome back. Not my usual video, but my RC trucks I don't rarely ever use. This is the Element Enduro Trail Runner. It's closer to a 1/9 scale. It's independent front suspension, solid rear axle, 4x4. It's referred to as a crawler or a scaler. Pretty good bit of flex. This, on the other hand, is something completely different. Never gonna find one like this, and I say that because this is homemade. The body comes from a toy from Walmart, I believe around 2005 era. They didn't sell very many of them. It's a 1/6 Yamaha Rhino. It was RC, but it was a very cheap China, typical RC. Don't last very long. Anyway, I bought the body probably back in 2007. I bought it used, but in nice condition, off of a forum, a great forum that shut down a few years ago because Facebook killed most forums. Anyway, it was a scale 4x4 RC. And, that's where I bought the body from. And the problem with this body, there was not a lot of platforms to fit underneath it because it's so compact underneath. I kept all the interior except for I had to cut the floorboard out for my servo. I never covered it. I actually pulled the servo, all the electronics out right now. But it's full independent suspension, front and rear. It has plenty of flex. With no weight in it, it still has plenty of flex. But what makes this thing so special, both front and rear drivetrain is from an old HPI Nitro RS4 on-road car. Chassis is homemade, 3/16 aluminum. As you can see, it's independent, all four wheels. I did lock the rear diff, so both rear tires spin together, and I left the front open diff, which makes it a challenge. This thing goes a lot of places. I made the steel bumper because there's also a body mount. This thing works so nice. I forget exactly what year I built it. Maybe 2010 or 11 I built it. Had quite a few runs. Let me go ahead and pull the body off. Show you what it looks like and the creative fabrication I had to do to this thing to make it work. Back in the day, you didn't buy the rig you wanted. You built the rig you wanted from multiple rigs. You borrow parts here and there. You make your own parts. That's what I love about forums. Back in the early 2000s, you didn't have many choices for axles and parts. Tamiya was the dominator when it came to buying axles and building. Tamiya had a truck series. They had the CC01 independent front, solid rear. It really wasn't a very capable vehicle, but a lot of people use the CC01 and throw different bodies on it. And there was, of course, mods and tuning, aftermarket support you can do to it to make it better. And Tamiya had that solid axle trucks from their TLT series, and people were using those solid axles. They weren't scale. They were pretty rugged. They were just ugly. But that's what we had. That's what we made work. So when I built this, that's how you pull the body off. It just comes off there. There's not a lot of room underneath there. There is a lot and there's not a lot. Now, like I said, motor's out. Let me see what kind of view you're getting. Only electronic left in there. It's a light controller. Alright, let's see if I can walk you through. As I mentioned, front and rear suspension came from an HPI Nitro RS4 touring car. It was very popular and easy to get back then. Servo mount came from a tractor slash chassis. I just cut a piece of the chassis out and bolted on top of the HPI, and I was able to use the HPI steering belt cranks. So the servo will go here with the horn in the front, and it'll push the steering rod. Steering is very good steering on here for an on-road car that's converted off-road. I did give it a suspension lift. I had to make a bracket for the rear. One, it gives it strength, and two, it allowed me to put taller shocks than what the car shocks were very short. To put taller shocks, I couldn't even tell you where these shocks came from. Well, maybe I could. I think it came from a Red Cat, a cheap disposable Red Cat that I bought for parts because I was looking for a drive line to make all independent, and I bought a used Red Cat buggy. Drive shafts. HPI uses dog bones. See, that's coming up on camera. Okay. HPI uses dog bones, and all this is a drive cup with a shaft with a ball in the end with a pin. It's a dog bone drive system. I wore out one set of dog bones. Upgrades still available. You can still buy all these factory parts. They're all still available. Maybe a little hard to find, because you can still buy it. Transmission. It's a VXL Traxxas Stampede. This was when the VXLs first came out. I bought a whole complete transmission. Their previous transmission was called a 272 Magnum, and that was a pretty tough transmission. That's the transmission I was going to use. VXL, when brushes came out, Traxxas had their own Valenium brushless system, and of course it would eat the factory transmissions. And like I said, the 272 Magnums are pretty tough, so Traxxas redesigned a VXL edition, and this is it. It can handle a lot of brushless power. Drive shafts. This is all custom. This is a Traxxas yoke that fits on the Traxxas transmission. Inside this yoke, I have a dog bone. I cut a piece off to match the dog bone on the input shaft on the transmission. And then I slid that dog bone inside the Traxxas half shaft, made an aluminum coupler that I threaded on, and then I drilled a hole and put a set screw, and it's all Loctited. Same thing with the front. Front's a similar design. I had to get a long dog bone to the front. That's a very long drive shaft. It's long and custom. I didn't need the U-joints here, but it really helped out with alignment, and it worked out great. Like I said, the front, same way. I actually threaded the dog bone, a nut threaded on there. The dog bone threads inside the Traxxas half U-joint shaft, and then I also threaded this aluminum collar around the outside of the shaft, and then it's Loctited with 2 set screws. This setup with the brushless motor has a lot of power. On my old channel, I believe I have a video of it riding years ago, but it has a lot of power. I thought for sure I was breaking drive shafts, and so far I've only wore out a rear set of the CVDs because I had this with no weight in it. It sits higher now, but when you put the battery in all, it sits at a nice ride height. But I used to have it jacked up all the way, and that puts an extra angle on the CV shafts. And dirt and trash gets there and it wears them out real quick. Like I said, this one could probably use some diff work. Not really, that's normal. And the transmission itself is locked. I locked the center diff. I could have left it open. I locked the center diff, locked the rear diff, left the front open. Yeah, one day I'm gonna put this project back together. You got just enough room, I believe, 3S 1700 milliamp LiPo, or maybe a 2000 milliamp. Just enough room to put a LiPo on this side. I believe the receiver goes here and a light kit. And then the motor, I got the motor sticking out the rear. It's, once everything's together, it's got a pretty good balance. It's dusty. It's been picked up for so long. I've used it a lot. Somewhere I got the little brake pedals that I was supposed to put on over the servo, but never did. So this body just fits on above the transmission, and when the battery's in there. One thing I never liked about this build, which maybe I can change, when you put the battery down in there, anytime you want to pull the body to get to that battery, you got to undo one screw. There's really no good way to mount this body. It's one screw in the bed, that's what holds it on, and two little plastic clips. I've never had a problem with the body coming off. I'll get my screw. And lining up the screw hole can be a bit of a pain sometimes. Most times I miss it the first try. So for a while, the last couple of years I've been running it instead of pulling the body every time, which the battery will last an hour. I've got a hole behind the seat where my plug will come out here, and I would just put the battery in the bed, and I was gonna put like some scale accessories in the bed to hide the battery. It doesn't make it top heavy because the aluminum plate I have on the bottom, it can go on a lot of angle before it wants to flip. I guess when the battery would be in it, that would be a tipping point. And like I said, the suspension is pretty soft. It has just as much clearance as my Element Enduro Trail Runner with the IFS1. Same amount of ground clearance. I said when the battery and the motor's in, it normally sits about like that. These tires and rims are some B-locks off of a cheap, I believe a company called ECX. They had a crawler, a 1/18 crawler. That's where the tires and rims came from. The green rings kind of went good with the green Yamaha Rhino body. But I can just about promise you, you are not going to find another body. I forget what company made this one. It may have been a New Ray, but it is a licensed Yamaha body. It was only put out for like 1 year of production. It's very hard to find. Ground clearance, I don't have a tape measure on me. Right now it actually has slightly higher ground clearance than my I'm lost. My Element Enduro, slightly higher ground clearance, and it's got about the same amount of flex. And again, if I install the battery in the motor, I'll get more flex out of it. It'll give me some extra weight. But this thing is just a lot of fun. I just stopped playing with it for whatever reason. I got bored with it. Same thing with this one. I bought it. It's not that I really got bored. It's hard for me to find free time to go play with something like this. I'm gonna make time. I'm gonna put the brushless motor back in here, the radio, the receiver, find my battery. I'm gonna try to get a video of this one playing around trail riding. It's a great trail vehicle. It says it's a 1/6 scale, so it would look nice on a trailer behind one of those big 6 scale axials. It would be the perfect size. And it's a project I never finished, like all of them really. I was supposed to put a winch on the front. Never done that. Never pulled the bumper off for paint. There really is nothing to do to the rear. It's a very nice vehicle. It probably performs just as good as this one off-road. Rocks. It's actually a pretty nice crawler for all independent. It crawls pretty nice, and a small footprint is nice because it's smaller than a 10th scale vehicle. So a 10th scale course is just, this thing does really well, but it's actually 1/6 scale. It was an easy build. It was a lot of figuring out. You can't really see in there with the body on. It hides all the transmission, but it was tight to figure out how I'm gonna get everything to fit under this body without sacrificing the interior. Initially I thought I would have to cut up a lot of the interior, and the only thing I had to cut was for the bulkhead for the steering and the servo, which it's easy for me to hide, but I have to leave room. See, when the steering turns, that knuckle just barely comes through. So I was supposed to build a false floor, and I found the pedals like last week. I was like, oh man, I've been looking for that, but it's got the 2 pedals, a brake and accelerator that goes in here. I just had to build a false wall. And lights, the cheap light kit is just in the front. It doesn't have light buckets. Those lights actually came with this vehicle. Just the LEDs on the outside, just the outside lights light up, not the actual lights. But if I'm not mistaken, it is a full light bucket. It is a full light bucket where you can't put LEDs in there. Yeah, just a really nice, well put together vehicle that I've beat up over the years. And, at one point I had it for sale, like 300 ready to run. That was years ago. Nobody really bid on it, you know, because with custom, if you break something, you gotta start sourcing parts, and especially when it comes to those two center drive shafts, you're not gonna find that. You're gonna have to make that. You may be able to change the diff cups. I think you have to change the actual whole diff. Yes, because these diff cups are made onto this pinion gear, but there's an upgrade you can buy to where you can use regular universals. That's the route you have to go, and then you can use some regular traction shafts, plastic shafts, or maybe there's a metal upgrade. But these diff cups do not come off of the differential. They're made onto it. So I would have to buy HPI Nitro RS4, a newer differential kit for front and rear to better put a standard universal. But I like the beefy drive shaft. Never had a problem, and I've abused it. I've got these tires jammed up in rocks and just hammer on the throttle. Either something's gonna break or it's gonna pull through. And usually what happens, the slipper clutch in the transmission, I have it set pretty tight. When this starts to bind, it starts twisting up the arms, and the slipper clutch kicks in. So that's what helps it a lot. I have to loosen the slipper clutch enough, because if you just nail it on takeoff, it would ride a wheelie with the brushless system I had in it. But yeah, I've done enough talking about it. This is my 160 Yamaha Rhino that you are not going to find anywhere else, and that's pretty much a guarantee. You're not going to find a body. You may be able to build your own chassis like this, but you're not going to find this body. And, I think the tires are the right size. It came with some stock ATV tires. They were hard rubber. At first I ran those. It looked cool. It was very scale, but they didn't grip. They didn't grip nothing at all. All right, thank y'all for viewing, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.